If y'all would like to start with a couple of minutes each talking about the issue that you're going to be addressing, and then we'll take some questions, and I'll be back here to help y'all with that. Oh. Hello?
Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Tanya Ditty. I'm the State Director for Concerned Women for America of Georgia. If you're not familiar with our organization, we are a national organization with a grassroots effort. We're the nation's largest public policy women's organization in the country, and we are a policy-driven organization. We have 7 core issues. I won't go into those, but we are an organization that values the role of men, unlike our counterparts on the left, and we believe that Christian conservative women are positioned to make a difference in our nation, that God has gifted us with unique talents and ideas and passions, and it is our responsibility to deliver those out and to battle against the radical, extreme feminist agenda. So I'm the state director, and I go to the state capitol during the state legislative session. That's one of the things that I do, and I'm here to talk about the gambling issue. We're going to talk about different issues. And so I'm going to talk quickly. I have limited time, and so I'm just going to give you a brief overview of what's going on with the gambling issue. We break the gambling issue up really kind of in 2 different areas. One is the casino gambling, and the other is the daily fantasy sports gambling. Just as a brief overview of where we're at on the casino gambling, we were very grateful that through the efforts of grassroots activists and prayer, we were able to keep the casino bills at bay last legislative session. There were 2, yay, and that's through all of our efforts, by the way. That's just not us sitting up here. There were 2 bills and 1 resolution that was introduced, and they are active for the next legislative session. They are sponsored by Senator Brandon Beach and Representative Ron Stevens, and they would authorize the licensing of at least 2, quote, destination resort, end quote, resorts, and they're really casinos in Georgia, and they both were heard in their respective regulated industries committees, but no votes were taken. Senator Brandon Beach has also filed his Senate resolution for a proposed constitutional amendment for casino gambling that would show up on the ballot. Their goal is to get it on the ballot next year and to allow the people of Georgia to determine whether we want to move forward with casinos. So let me give you my 3 main points I want you to take away from this. First of all, by the end of the legislative session, there were more lobbyists down there for casino lobbyists than there were state senators. I think my eyes were really open on the last day of the session because they were everywhere. And they were just everywhere. And millions of dollars have been poured into the state by the casino lobbyists. And one other point to make, last Saturday, I don't know who all was at the state GOP convention, the state committee members. They voted to pass a resolution in opposition for casinos that we didn't get a chance to do at the state convention, so we're grateful for that. Okay, here's my 3 points on casino legislation. Casinos are bad for Georgia. I don't know whether you gamble or not, but they're bad. They're bad for Georgia businesses, and they're bad for Georgia families. I'm not going to go through the litany of why they're bad. We have a table out in the where we ate lunch, and we have all of the talking points on that. The bills say that they will only... I thought we had 10 minutes. We were told 10 minutes. Thank you. Okay, I'm sorry. We were told 10 minutes. Okay, I'm sorry. I'll go ahead and go on. Okay. Anyway, we were told that they would only be up maybe 2 to 4 casinos, but you have to understand that the Indians can come in once casinos are established. They can come in, claim land where they've been, and federally they are allowed to set up casinos. So it'll be more than that. So here's what we are asking you to do. First of all, you can call your state senator and House of Representative members and tell them to vote no on casinos. But here's something more important. What we hear at the Capitol when we're lobbying is, well, we want the people of Georgia to have the opportunity to vote. And that is because they want it on the ballot. So they have to pass this resolution to get it on the ballot. And we say no to that for two reasons. First of all, communities do not have enough money to fight the amount of money that will be coming in from the casinos, the casino lobbyists, and the industry. There will be no way to combat that. So we don't want that. And number two, the legislators need to be on the front line of defense against any bill or any measure that impacts greatly families and communities. And they need not punt the football over to the people of Georgia. They were elected to represent us, and they don't need to take the easy way out and allow Georgians to vote. So that's my takeaway on that. All right, quickly, just on daily fantasy sports, if you'll hold on just a second. Now, daily fantasy sports has been a harder bill to message on because there's a lot of fake news and misinformation coming out from the bill sponsor on this. And, I look around the room and, got older folks, younger folks. Some of you might have played daily fantasy sports, the old type league where you went the whole year. This is not the daily fantasy sports that we're talking about. This is not the fantasy sports we're talking about. The daily fantasy sports bill is seeking to regulate online fantasy sports. It is the crack cocaine of the younger generation when it comes to gambling, and it must not pass. It passed the House, and it's sitting now in the Senate Regulated Industries Committee because it never got out of the Senate. What the bill sponsor says is daily fantasy sports is a game of skill, much like a golf tournament or bass fishing tournament. But if you are in those types of tournaments, who are you betting against? Yourself. But when you play daily fantasy sports, you're betting against players, teams, whatever, where you have no control over that. And that immediately takes it out of the game of skill and puts it in the game of chance. Our state constitution says you can't do that. So they're trying to pass legislation that basically is breaking the state constitution. And, the bill sponsor constantly comes back on it's a game of skill, not chance. And it all depends, I guess, what the word is my thoughts on that. So, but we're asking that you side with the young people who are getting addicted to daily fantasy sports in droves. They're doing it on their phone. What's the saying John Kent says? Do it on your phone and you lose your home. Something like that. Play on your phone and you lose your home. We need to stop this, and we've got to stop it on the Senate side. I really believe they will try to attach it to a bill next year to get it through. But those are where we're at on gambling. And if you want all the action statements, stop out at our table, Concerned Women for America with American Principles Project, and we have all the action statements and phone numbers. Thank you.
Yes. I'm Senator Marty Harbin. One of the things I would add to what's going on, if you read Bloomberg and Forbes magazine, the financial backing for this that's going on is coming from the pornography industry. And what they are doing is they are targeting the young men who are playing on that, which is what the majority of the players are, and they will be having pop-ups that pop up. And you can read about that and look at that. So the money that's backing it is the pornography industry, and that's what they're wanting this for and why there's such a push for this. It is a push to bring pornography even further into our society. And so that's a part you can get from Bloomberg. You can also get it out of Forbes magazine. But there's an interesting article just to understand where the money. And if you want to know the truth, follow the money.
Thank you. All right, Dave.
Hi there, I'm Dave Baker. I'm Executive Director of Faith and Freedom Coalition of Georgia. Many of you know our National Chairman, Ralph Reed, and you know my colleague, Virginia Galloway, who's our Regional Field Director. And with Tanya and Jane and other groups, we're also down at the Capitol during the session working on issues. We have our table out there as well, and as if you don't get enough newsletters, please sign up for one more. We do keep you informed of what's going on down at the Capitol during the session, and also want to invite you to our annual conference, Road to Majority, every summer, where President Trump and Vice President Pence both spoke this year. So we'd love to have you there next year. So I'm going to talk about marijuana. And so I just want to kind of get it's always good to know your room. How many people here like George Soros? No? No? Okay. So you wouldn't want to help him and other left-wing billionaires fund things like he's done over the past 25 years of giving millions and millions of dollars to the Marijuana Policy Project, the goal of which is to get marijuana on ballot initiatives in states all across the country in order to legalize it. And this is where the money for these movements are coming from. Of course, you all know about Soros. Peter Lewis is the retired CEO of the aptly named Progressive Insurance Company, you know, Flo on TV. Turns out Flo's a left-winger too. And the late John Sperling, who was the founder of, it was called Apollo Education, University of Phoenix is probably the brand name you'd know best. So these guys have, over the past 25 years, poured millions of dollars into state initiatives to legalize marijuana. And it's always the same thing. So, there's a group called National Organization for Reform of Marijuana Laws, NORML, and they're a pro-pot, pro-legalization organization. And back in 1993, Richard Cowan, who was then the director of the group, said, the key to full legalization is medical access. So when you hear about medical marijuana, that's never an end in itself. The point is medical marijuana leads to legalization, which leads to cultivation, and it's always about what cultivation leads to, and that's the money. There's millions and millions of dollars for unscrupulous businessmen to make in the cultivation of marijuana, and they use medical marijuana as, if you will, the gateway drug to get into this. And this is how it's happened in state after state after state. Here in Georgia, back in 2015, we had HB1, Haley's Hope Act, and what everybody was told, oh, there are children with epilepsy and other seizure disorders. They've tried everything, nothing works. We'll give them this CBD oil, which is, marijuana has thousands of compounds, but if you will, CBD is supposed to be the medicinal element of marijuana. THC is the compound that gets you high. No, very low THC, just trace amounts. We want them to get this CBD oil. They'll take it orally. It stops these seizures. Anecdotal, but you know, you feel for parents with sick children. They say nothing else works. They say this oil helped them. We said, fine. State legislature said, fine. Governor signed the bill. There we go. Alan Peake, Republican from Macon, is the sponsor of this and this other marijuana legislation. Okay, we got one enthusiast there. But Alan's, okay, make it two. Alan's nickname is, okay, fine. But here's the problem, though. It never stops with that. The other part of HB1 was said, set up a study committee. Excuse me.
The convention, let's have order, y'all. We'll have questions here in a second. Y'all can tell them what you think of them in a minute, but
Okay.
Show respect.
Thank you.
This isn't the state GOP convention after all.
Okay. Set up a study committee. The governor's office, the agriculture commissioner, and every member of law enforcement on that study committee said, what we have is fine, but no more and no cultivation. Peake, undeterred, said, thank you all very much. Here's another bill that would have added over a dozen different diseases and eliminated any limits on THC. So what we had just been told a matter of weeks before, that, oh, it's about the CBD, it's about the medicinal part, was just shown not to be true. The point was to try to get marijuana legalized as much as possible. And already, even with what is now called low THC oil, we already have the highest THC level of any limited use state in the country. In 2017, last year, the state Senate passed an amended SB 16 that added more medical conditions. And again, fine, but this and no more. But undeterred, there is also a House resolution which would put, HR 36, which would put marijuana cultivation on the ballot. Of course, being a ballot initiative, they're always phrased like it's a tax question, but the word cultivation is in there, and the point is to legalize cultivation in the state. There are groups that we work with. One I would recommend to you, National Families in Action. It's nationalfamilies.org, and they have written a report on tracking the money that's legalizing marijuana. I highly recommend this to you. Another group is SAM, Smart Approaches to Marijuana. These are fellows that have worked in the State Department all over the world, on drug interdiction, have worked for the Office of National Drug Control Policy, PhDs, experts in the field, and their tagline is preventing another big tobacco. The point is we've had 50 years of public policy on smoking cessation, about the dangers to health that just tobacco presents. And now despite all of this, people are just want to throw caution to the wind, throw the entire FDA approval process out the door, or trying to, which you can. The point is drugs have to be tested to be safe and effective, and all the so-called medical marijuana has undergone none of these tests. And the whole point of FDA approval process is that drugs are tested, they are double-blind clinical trials before they are approved, and everyone, when it comes to marijuana, all of a sudden is like, oh, forget it, no, anecdotally this is good, we should make it legal. I'm sure Merck and Pfizer would love to be able to just circumvent the whole FDA approval process. It doesn't work that way, folks. You want to get it done, you have to do the hard work. You can't just by legislative fiat say, we're going to treat people, and children in particular, with untested, unknown drugs without any analysis of concentration, dosage, frequency, or duration, but just anecdotally say, oh, I'm going to medicate my child, and this is going to be good for him. This is dangerous, dangerous road we're going down, and we strongly fight against it. Just one last thing I want to say. We've got a giant opioid crisis in this state, and there's bill after bill after bill in the General Assembly about curbing the abuses of opioids. Opioids are what the DEA call a Schedule II drug, meaning they're highly addictive, but they have some medical benefit. And we already have this problem with drugs that have been FDA tested and approved. Marijuana is a Schedule I drug, which, thank you,
Yeah.
which means that it's highly addictive and has no medical benefit. And so this is courting disaster to try to legalize marijuana and use it in untested and unapproved fashion. Thank you.
We have a couple more minutes before. I may have a report now. I'm told the resolutions committee is about ready to come back and give the report so we can start voting, but if anybody has, should I really ask for questions from this crowd? Okay, I'll make like Donahue and ask for some questions. Except, okay, oh, I'm sorry. You haven't said anything to say yet? Oh, 10 minutes each. I'm sorry, we're supposed to be 5, but that's okay. So I saw Marty. You had a look on you like, this guy's filibustering me. Now I know why he was. Go ahead, Marty. I'm sorry.
I'm Senator Marty Harbin. This is finishing up my 3rd year, and I want to talk to you just a little bit about religious liberty. But I want to start with this. The foundation of what we are dealing with is our First Amendment. And here's what most people do not realize. The First Amendment is where we're dealing with what our founding fathers set in place as very important. When someone puts first, I would have probably put the Second Amendment first, okay, if it had been me, because after fighting the British, I would have done that, right? Wouldn't most of y'all that way? But here's what you read, is it says the First Amendment was taken, and it said this, it said that Congress shall make no law respecting the establishment of religion, because here's what they had seen. They had seen what happened when the clergy and government were in cahoots with one another. And our founding fathers stopped that and did not want that. But think about this. The Declaration of Independence listed all of their grievances. And when they come up with the Constitution, what's the first thing they deal with? Religious liberty. That Congress shall make no laws respecting the establishment of religion or the free exercise thereof. Now that's interesting that of all the things they could take, all the things they could put together, they decided that religion was their number one thing to put in there. And I think you have to think about that, and you have to historically look at what happened. You look at William Tyndale, who was writing the Bible and doing that. You know what the punishment for what he was doing for translating the Bible into English was? Anybody know? They hung him and then burned him. And his prayer, his last prayer was this. His last prayer was, let the king's eyes be opened. King Henry VIII desired to divorce his wife. Guess what happened? He took over the Church of England, and guess what? he allowed the establishment of printing the Bible and distributing it to all the people. Very interesting what happens. So I want to leave us off just with that kind of opening. Religious liberty has been a hot, hot topic. I was told it was the red meat of conservative Republicans, is what one of the legislators told me. And I said, really? And let me kind of give you just a couple of things that we've seen there. We've seen in Georgia, we've seen issues with Savannah, with hazing and foot washing. We've seen the Gwinnett school system, Gwinnett College, where a young man was sharing his faith in a free speech zone, and he was stopped from doing that. That's kind of interesting as we see those things stopping. And let me give you just a little history. In 1994, Josh McCoon's original bill was put forth. It did not pass until 16. With 16, there were also amendments. There was pastor protection and some business protections that were put on the bill. And with that, most of your Republican representatives and senators voted yes. Do y'all know what happened? The governor vetoed it. Now, what we're going to talk about is what happens after that it was passed and why it was passed, because this past year I put forth another religious liberty bill. It is one page. It is the 93 version of religious liberty. And what I want to do, I'm going to pass to Jane and I'm going to close, but kind of what makes that up and why it's different and what we had before. So I'm going to turn that over to Jane, and then we're tag team.
Okay, thank you. My name is Jane Robbins. I'm with the American Principles Project, and we work on religious liberty issues and on education issues. So please, when you stop by the table, pick up some of the articles that we've written on education, because we don't have time to talk about that. I just wanted to tell you exactly what Senator Harbin's bill would do if it gets passed and is signed. It's a RFRA. It's a Religious Freedom Restoration Act. And it started on the federal level. For years and years, when a court was considering a case in which someone argued that his free exercise of religion had been burdened by the government, the court applied a very strict standard to that case. It was called strict scrutiny. The court would look at what the government did very, very carefully to determine if the government had the right to do that. That changed in 1990. The Supreme Court ruled then that for free exercise cases, the standard would not be strict scrutiny, it would be rational basis. And what that means is the government wins if it can come up with any reason for what it did. So that really changed the landscape of protecting one's religious freedom from government action. So Congress, in response to that, passed a law called the Religious Freedom Restoration Act, or RFRA. That was in 1993, and it passed almost unanimously, and then Congressman Nathan Deal voted for it. What RFRA would do is, and this is what Senator Harbin's bill is, it would just take the federal law and put it into the state. What RFRA says is that before the government can substantially burden someone's free exercise of religion, the government must show a compelling interest that is to be protected, and that there is no less restrictive means of accomplishing that interest. Now, in 1997, the Supreme Court came back and said, well, that's fine for the federal government, but that federal RFRA does not apply to state and local governments, to discrimination by state and local governments. So states started passing their own RFRAs so that people would be protected with that same high standard from discrimination by state and local government. And to this date, 31 states have such a state RFRA, either in statute or by judicial decision. And all of the states in the Southeast have one. All the states surrounding Georgia have one. Georgia does not. And so what happens if you're suing under RFRA? It means you get your day in court, essentially, and you've got a good argument. It doesn't mean you win. You go to court, the court does a balancing test. And if you want an example of how this works, you remember the Hobby Lobby case from several years ago? That was litigated under the federal RFRA. Hobby Lobby said the government does not have the right to tell us that we have to pay for abortion-inducing drugs. If that were a case in Georgia and the government was telling them they had to do that, they would lose because we don't have a RFRA. So the only, Senator Harbin talked about some examples in Georgia. It covers a whole waterfront of things: zoning, schools, Christian clubs in schools that are being denied, that sort of thing. It's all over the board of things that it could affect, but it doesn't mean the plaintiff wins. It means the plaintiff gets his day in court and the court will balance. The only thing it means is that the rest of us would have the same level of protection for our free exercise that inmates in federal prisons have, and that's all it is. So I'll turn it back over.
And this has to do with Georgia law, both state and city and county law. It would bring those standards of those laws to the same that we have with federal law today. That's a simple change in what we're trying to do. And let me kind of give you a little bit of the political overview that you need to understand. When the governor vetoed this, and if you look back at how your senators or representatives voted, they all voted almost unanimously for religious liberty. But with the vetoing, and it was known that he was going to probably veto it. I will tell you, the night of sine die, I had a petition started to call for a special session, and there were people who were going, whoa, you're going to do what? And I said, yeah, we're going to call a special session if we don't get religious liberty through. But what happened, that gave cover to everybody that had done it. When we brought up 93 RFRA this year, it is the same language that Governor Deal signed when he was in Congress. It passed the Senate unanimously, passed the House unanimously at the federal level, passed the Senate with 3 dissenting votes, and was signed by Bill Clinton into law. And so you've got to understand that this was a very low throw of taking the law and putting it in. It was taken. Lieutenant Governor Casey Cagle put it in the Rules Committee. It is still active. It is sitting in the Rules Committee right now. Okay? So that's something that we need to be asking when you're supporting candidates, where do you stand on religious liberty? And all we're trying to do is to get the opportunity for the House and the Senate to vote, and then the governor has to make a decision whether he will sign his same version that he signed in 93. That's all we're asking for there to be looked at and done. I want to read you one thing real quickly and I'll close. And make two notes. Number one is Florida increased their religious liberties for their schools this year. I remind you that Mickey Mouse and Donald Duck live in Florida. Y'all got that? Also, that Texas has RFRA much stronger than we do, and the Super Bowl was played there last year. And I'm sorry, we the people of Georgia are being extorted, and it's wrong to extort us. And whether you like it or not, like him or not, I want to tell you what, Donald Trump signed the religious liberty order, and I want to read you this part, and I'll close. It says, the order directs the government to vigorously enforce federal laws, robust protections for religious freedom. We will not allow the people of faith to be targeted, bullied, or silenced again. We will never stand for religious discrimination. Trump said before signing the order, which states it is now the administration's policy to protect and vigorously promote religious liberty. I believe it's time for Georgia to do the same. And you need to ask every elected official where they stand. And if it's not good for Georgia, then we need to try to take down the federal then.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You cannot be two-faced about this. This is a political football that big business, Mickey Mouse and Donald Duck want to fight over, and we don't need to back down. We need to stand up for that which is right, and we deserve the same level of protection from Georgia law as we have from federal law.